Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. I'm very excited. Finally, I've got Bev Bishop on the line. So we haven't actually met in person, but we were introduced by a dear friend, Ben Ackers, who was also on the podcast recently. And he just was like, you got to speak to Bev. Her story is amazing. She's the person to get on your show. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so fun to have you right in the middle of isolation and quarantine and all the rest of the drama that's probably testing some of our resilience a little bit again. Give our listeners a little bit of insight into, I know you do hypnotherapy, you're an actor, you do work with medical clients, all sorts of things. Give us a little insight into what you do. And I mean, what are you passionate about at the moment?
I'm passionate about people, I think, which is probably why I do all of those things.
You're a very busy lady.
I probably do too many things, probably not well enough.
Yeah.
In that sense, because I like people and I like connecting with people and looking at different ways of connecting with people.
Do you also find it hard to say no, like many of us women do?
I find it almost impossible to say no. Almost impossible to say no. I think as a freelancer, there is that fear of,
sure,
can I afford to say no? But I think I'm a natural people pleaser as well, a little bit. And I find myself going, oh, that's fine. Oh, yeah. Oh, I can. Oh, yeah, don't worry. I can fit that in. Oh, yeah, absolutely fine. And then I get off the phone or after I've sent the email and then I think, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Why did I do that? I don't really want to do it.
Yeah. And so what's the downside of that sort of cycle? Obviously there's great upsides. I'm sure people everywhere.
It's a lovely upside because there are times when I've said yes and I've been unsure and I'm thinking, I'm so glad I said yes because that was a brilliant project.
Sure.
The downside is doing too many things and not enough time. Sure. And then feeling that I'm not doing all those things well enough and then feeling a bit bad about myself and then worrying that I'm letting other people down.
That's a big old conditioned fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Letting people down. So how are you finding isolation and just less work, I imagine? Is that...
Well, if I'm to be absolutely blunt, it's all stopped. I have nothing. Although I'm still keeping really, really busy.
Sure.
It sounds like a terrible thing to say given what's going on and there are thousands of people dying. But actually, it's given me permission to stop and to breathe and to reflect and to really look at what is important and to get myself into a different rhythm and a different routine. And I feel really awful saying that because this is a terrible thing that's happening. But for me, I'm actually finding myself feeling more at peace with myself.
And I mean, I completely relate to what you're saying, having that external, because of an external event, regardless of what it is. And of course, we have total empathy and sympathy for people who are struggling in a bigger way. But on being on that relentless wheel, right, of action, giving, showing up, and not really giving ourselves. And I think the fear piece around money can sometimes just be a narrative of like, let me just keep moving,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because I've been saying to family and friends, I know I need to stop. I'm doing too much. I'm so tired. I need to stop. But then I never did stop. And now I've stopped.
You've had to. Yeah. Why do you think so you had the self-awareness and perhaps the physical impact, or you had clues?
I could feel myself flagging. Yeah. It was money. It was fear of not being able to manage, which is interesting because now I'm in a position where all the income has stopped. I don't have savings. And even though the government have said that they'll help out, it's kind of complex being a freelancer.
It is.
And I'm not really worried about money anymore, which is interesting given that seemed to be the driving force of not being able to stop. Now I have to stop and I don't have any income coming in. I'm thinking, I'll manage. It'll be all right.
It's
really interesting. Really,
do you think, and I know we can't predict the future, but do you think this could impact your perspective on the amount or the way that you were working prior to this?
I hope so. I hope I don't go back to how I was.
It's easily
I
done, right?
hope I don't. My concern with a lot of this, because I can see that a lot, within this pandemic, I'm seeing there's so much goodwill
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of community and people wanting to help. I hope that once it's all over, we don't all just go back to how we were before. I really hope that doesn't happen, and I hope that I don't.
Yeah. How do you want to be moving forward from this?
A bit
Given
more
that you
like I
still
am
need
now.
to earn money. A bit more
Given
like,
that I do what I am doing now, but earning some money at the same time.
yeah. Get some money, chill out a little
Get some
bit.
money, chill out a bit. I mean, I'm developing a new show at the moment, so in a way, it feels a bit like I'm in a writer's retreat, so
You're
to speak,
creative. Yeah.
because I'm creating stuff. And actually, what's interesting, because I'm a complete technophobe, I really am. Technology
Oh,
frightens me, and this has forced me to have to engage with it.
that's true.
And I've been running online laughter sessions for people, which is something I never dreamed that I would do.
Yeah.
And I'm finding those sessions a real joy, a real. Sorry, I was just turning my phone
That's right.
off.
That's right.
I'm finding these sessions a real joy and a genuine connection with people. Doing 15 minutes of laughter at 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning as a way to start the day. And I never in a month of Sundays thought I'd be running those kind of sessions.
No.
Never in a month of Sundays. So in a sense, I've embraced the technology, which still frightens me, but I guess maybe it's somebody who I like people and I like connecting. It's forced me to do something about it.
Well, and that's always the positive, and we get to choose how we view some of these things, right? So being forced to learn a new skill or put ourselves out there in a way that we wouldn't normally be comfortable with can really be interesting, and a choice, I believe. Like, we can choose how we view some of this stuff. Now you're working on this new show, and I know it's been inspired by personal experience, and the essence, I guess, of this podcast is helping us think about what are the things in our life that build our resilience, our character, and I guess inspire creativity in a way. And I know your story is pretty intense. Talk us through just some of those maybe rock bottom points for you, and what was your story that led up to essentially creating this show, which I want to hear about in a minute.
Okay. My son Jess, he died on the 11th of October 2018. He took his life. He just started at UEA, University of East Anglia, to study law, which is what he wanted to do. He was following his dream, and he took his life just 2 weeks into the course. So here I am, 18 months.
This is
later.
very recent. Yeah.
It's really recent. Yeah. Last year, I think possibly part of my grieving process and me being somebody who is creative, I think I use my creativity to help me process my feelings. Last year, I made a film which was based on the final days I spent with him in the funeral home before he was buried. It's called 5 Days to Say Goodbye. I don't believe I'd have got to the funeral without spending the time I did with Jess in the funeral home. I went to see him every single day and talked until I had nothing else to say, which I think enabled me to close the door. On that final day when I did say goodbye and I kissed him on the forehead, and I got to the funeral. Those moments were really special to me, and I made a film last year, which was my memories of those moments. It's 20 minutes long, and it gave me a focus. It also brought me closer to him because I was remembering those really precious times. And the film was shown on the first anniversary of his death, which was last October, the 11th of October. And it's something I'm really proud of. And it's a piece about love, and it's a piece about grief, my grief. And the promise I made to him is that I'd live a good life for him and for me. And then the second year, I can feel my voice wobbling a little bit. In some ways, I'm finding it more difficult. The pain feels more intense than the first year. Maybe the anaesthetic of shock has worn off. I'm not sure, but I'm feeling things so much more intensely. And I guess as a way again of processing where I'm at, I'm developing a show. It'll be a live show.
Tell us about the show.
It's called Finding Magic. And it's about me finding magic again after the loss of my son, who was my magic. He gave me joy. He was that sparkle in my life. We had so much fun together. We played together. We laughed so much together. So I guess losing him, I feel like I lost my joy to some extent, or a large extent. So I guess this show is about me finding that magic again, and it's my process. It's going to be a one-woman show, and what interests me is as an actor, I spend my life being somebody else.
Yeah.
And last year, I did quite a number of presentations of speaking quite honestly as a mum, just a mum.
Yeah.
Jess's mum, about me and my boy, and simply standing on stage, no props, nothing, just being me and sharing my story and my experiences, just me, without hiding behind a character. And what I'm really keen to do with this show is to be just me, telling the audience my story, sharing with them my experience, but doing it creatively and hopefully with lots of laughter, because that's something me and Jess did a lot together. Laughter is really important to me. It's my practice of choice, so to speak. I literally do laugh every day because it helps me. It really releases endorphins. It de-stresses me. I also love humour, and comedy has gotten me through. Humour's got me through a lot of difficult situations. So I hope the show, whilst obviously is going to have serious moments because it's my journey through grief, I hope that it will also be really funny too, because that's part of me.
Yeah.
I like to still have fun, even though sometimes I don't always feel it, but it's part of me.
I love that. And so many people might do something like this, sort of in a bit more hindsight, you know? They might know, you know, they might have built that resilience, that character, and you have all of those qualities, obviously. But it sounds very much, before we started recording, you were saying, I don't know the ending yet, right?
No, I don't know where the ending, because I haven't found my magic yet.
Right. So you're literally, and as the initial documentary as well, it sounds like you were very much doing it in process, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'm still figuring this out, but I want to get it out in some kind of medium. And it's almost the process of doing that helps you find your answers, your closure.
Yeah, it does. The film that helped me enormously. But I knew what the end was. To an extent, it was already written, and I was writing from based on what I remembered. This is different in that I'm still in the process of it. So I'm kind of writing as I go along, and I'm thinking about things and jotting things down, acting things out, so to speak. So I talk to myself quite a lot.
Whatever works, right?
Okay. I walk quite a lot.
Movement.
And as I'm walking, I'm thinking about different scenes. I talk to friends a lot about it. I'm interested in the word magic, finding magic. So I've been thinking about, what is magic? What is it? And I think it's different for different people. Sure. There are so many different meanings of what magic is. And I'm thinking, do I have magic now, or has it all completely gone? If I do, what is it? Where do I get it from? And also, I guess because I guess I'm an entertainer, I'm thinking, do you know what? I'm going to learn some magic for this show.
Yes, of course.
I'm literally going to do some magic.
Yeah.
Which again, that's a fun thing. That's another fun thing, because and it's a challenge. It's something that I can focus on and think, okay, what kind of magic tricks am I going to learn? How is that going to be incorporated into the show so that it's not just me just doing a trick? It's
something that fits into the narrative. Yeah,
and fits into the narrative.
You started talking about this pretty early on in the grief process as well, it seems. So talking as a mom, you said, as you know, in your role as yourself, like what prompted you to be on a bigger stage with this, I mean, I want to say horrific story, you know, an experience. And it's not a story, it's an experience. What prompted you to do that?
I think I had a need to share my story, and I think I'm going to start crying again. I want everybody to remember my son's name. He was such a wonderful. Oh, he's difficult. My God, he was difficult.
Was he?
So difficult. You know, I make no bones about that. He wasn't the easiest, but my goodness, he was such a character, such a personality, and I think he touched so many people, and I want that to continue. So I think perhaps it's by talking about him and talking about my experience, it keeps him with me.
You get to remember him.
I get to remember him, but I think it's the desire that I want. I'm calling it magic now, but I think it's where my head is. But I want him to touch other people who may not have met him, because for me he was such a remarkable force. So I think it's a need I had to share my experience.
And some people would almost shut all of that down in perhaps the privacy, the shame, the personal grief, not wanting people to see their own emotion, or and you've essentially and I guess there's these lofty views of like purpose and let's prevent it from happening again and things like that. But I love what you're saying from this heartfelt place, which is simply, this is me. Like, I need to tell the story for me and to remember him and allow his name to be remembered, that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I want him to be remembered, and I think every time I talk about him, it's an expression of love, because I love him. I still love him so much, and I do feel that perhaps the depth of grief I feel equates the depth of love that I have for him, and I guess I want to keep on expressing that love, because he's not there to give it to him. But I still feel a need to express the love that is there always.
In whichever way possible.
In whichever way. And I guess that's and I guess I'm doing it publicly.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Now, I mean, I'm welling up here, and I've got a 16-year-old son. I work in the mental health space. I very much know that suicide is one of the biggest killers of men, young men, as you'll be aware of. And I just picture you, and I'm seeing your emotion, telling your story, and I'm just imagining, like, what if it was my 16-year-old who has, just as you described, Jesse, his whole life in front of him. He seems ambitious, excited about the world. Of course, every teenager, you're going to have your challenges and all of that. I can't even fathom how one would get out of bed the next morning, or how, like, I imagine that you would go into detective overdrive. What are the signs that I missed? What could I have done? That whole cycle. And I'm just curious about, and perhaps it's in your documentary, which I actually can't wait to see. But what is that process in the lead up, and then the making sense of? And of course you had those, I say beautiful, but you know what I mean, 5 days to find some kind of closure within the sudden loss. Did you see it? Could anyone see it coming? Did he have mental health issues? Like, what was going on?
He did have mental health issues. Yes, he did. They started, well, as far as I know, they started when he was 16. They may have been there from childhood. I don't know, but I was aware of it when he was 16. He developed an eating disorder. He suffered from issues around self-esteem. A beautiful boy, so beautiful, so handsome. But he had.
It's the internal world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the internal world, and he developed depression. He spoke to me quite openly about it.
Okay.
He'd been to see his GP. He was offered counselling. That didn't work for him. I think perhaps he didn't find the right person. I don't know. It was a battle. He did battle with it.
Sure.
The difficulty I have is I didn't see it coming. I didn't. I knew he had mental health issues. I knew how serious they were. He did tell me he knew what he was going to do with his life. He more or less told me that at some point he'd take his life. It was more a question of when, which as a mum, what do you do with that information? But he said that he knew at some point, he knew how his life would end
away, right?
And as a mum, I couldn't do anything to take the pain away. However, he seemed to have, I don't mean overcome it, because I'm not sure whether you ever really, really can. You can perhaps learn to live with it.
Yeah.
But he'd got the exam results that he needed.
Okay.
He just started university, which was his dream. It was the university he wanted to go to. He wanted to study law. As part of the course, he was meant to go abroad and study. He decided he wanted to study in Berlin. His life was ahead of him, and it seemed like things were just starting to work out after him having some tricky times. And it seemed like just when things were starting to work out, he ended his life. So in that way, I didn't see it coming. I knew that he'd only been at uni 2 weeks, and some days he said to me, "Oh, I don't know whether I'm fitting in. I'm not quite sure about this."
But you wouldn't
but I just
draw that conclusion.
It's the same thing as thousands of other students are going through the same teething problems.
Yeah.
Fitting in, starting a new life.
Mm-hmm.
He was in halls of residence. He was away from home. Although I only live in Cromer, and he's got a car, or he had a car, and he was coming home weekends. So I had no clue.
No.
What I settle with, and this is really genuine, and it helps. He made a choice, and I have to accept it. And I have to respect it, because it was his choice to make, not mine.
Yeah.
Not mine. And I think I will never know. I suspect in that moment, however long that moment lasted, he felt his life was unendurable, so he did something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to accept that. I wish it was different, but it's not, and I can't change it. So I have to accept it.
Yeah, it's a powerful message
Yeah.
about choice. And as much as we might go over and over, it's not in our control,
I
right?
can't change it.
No,
And maybe I never could. I
no,
don't know. I wish things were different, but they're not. And the hardest thing is I do rewind a lot. I rewind constantly.
I'm sure.
But I still can't think of what I could have done differently on that day or the day before, in order to have made it better for him, in order for him to have made a different decision.
Do you, and this might feel like a left field question, but it's coming from my perspective of me coping with some trauma that's happened in my own past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that your relentless busyness in life, right, is partly kind of a coping strategy in order to, because it's kind of hard to sit with the space of thinking and of reminiscing or all of the stuff that happens in the silence?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing.
Sure.
There was very much the financial thing going on. I need to keep working. I need to keep working. I'm freelance. I don't have that luxury of taking time off. But equally, I wasn't just working. I was socializing. I was making a film.
Yeah, an emotive film as well.
An emotional film, because I think I was frightened.
Yes.
To simply be and to sit with the pain. Now I have no choice because I'm home alone. I have no work. There's been howling because I think it's all been there.
It's building up.
It's been waiting. It's been
absolutely.
Waiting to
to be felt is what I want to say.
Yeah,
and releasing.
Yeah.
And it's so hard, and I relate to this so much and can work myself to burnout symptoms of heart palpitations, feeling more anxious, hard to focus, real physical type symptoms. And I have to question, why is it so difficult for me to just, the world's not going to end, as we realize now with, your forced sort of isolation and stopping. And that actually the release comes through the feeling, but with something as sort of huge as you're describing, like the loss of a child, like I just can't even fathom that experience. I've got two. There's something around just not being able to, like, feeling that you'll fall apart forever. If I sit with this grief, what if I can never get up again? I don't know.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. It's quite overwhelming, but you know what? It's not killed me.
Well, and what I'm seeing in your essence and in the projects that you're working on and the speaking about it and really being vulnerable and putting yourself out there is this beautiful purpose out of the pain. So something that's impacting lives, the creativity that's supporting you, but also the audience. So I can imagine anybody in your talks, I mean, I'm just having this conversation with you now and I feel impacted, much less the 5 days where you spend with, I mean, to process, because it would have been such a shock. And so there's this turning of pain into purpose, but really from, I need to heal myself. Like, how do I get through this? Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other, and I know that grief is not linear. Like you said, it's really powerful for you to say the second year feels actually worse.
Much harder.
It's harder.
Oh my goodness, I can't compare last year to this year. My goodness, this year there are no words actually for how this year is compared to last year. It's so much more difficult for me. And
what do you put that down to? Is it just the passing of time, just for you personally? So it's not going to apply to everyone.
And I'm aware we're all different, and I can see the grief in Jess's dad and his brother Sam, and we're all dealing with it completely differently. For me, there might be the reality of he's not coming back.
Yeah.
He's not coming back.
It's almost
He's
surreal
really
that
gone.
first year.
Whereas the first year, I knew it. I can barely even say the word death, but I knew he was dead. It's hard to say that word. I knew, but it was like I was living in a surreal nightmare. I was in my own film, which was
Observing
really
yourself kind of
real.
having these experiences.
Yeah. There was part of me felt almost detached from it, that I could almost see myself getting on with my day-to-day life.
Just numb a bit.
But I was quite numb. Whereas this year, I can feel it's a physical pain I'm feeling. It's in my chest, and it's so physical. Sometimes I think I don't know whether I can bear this pain any longer, but I can, and I will. It's so physical, and I cry quite a lot. I didn't cry very much last year. I find myself crying quite a lot. I just feel more sensitive this year, feeling things generally more, not just pain, but I'm feeling everything more. So
sure.
I laugh quicker, but I also feel anger quicker. It just feels like I'm more finely tuned this year, but almost to the extreme, where I think, I wish I wasn't quite so sensitive.
Let me just numb out just a little bit. Yeah. There's something really interesting, almost, and it almost sounds cruel to say this to you, but it has been some kind of gift within this trauma, and that's not to take away the pain of it and the horrificness. Obviously we would all wish that it had never happened, but there's something about that heightened awareness that I think I get to hear on this podcast, because I have so many different conversations about people's trauma and the things that they've gone through, and hearing that, like, and then something woke up in me, or my best work came after that, or I was able to give, and the ripple effect of, me talking about Jesse and talking about who he was, and, that there's some kind of gift, even when we're in the thick of it, like we're just in the worst pain. I mean, you describe it so eloquently. You're obviously an actress and know what you're doing, but like just the physical, it's a physical pain, not just an emotional pain. Yeah. What are some of, and I know you've just got to feel the feels, work through it, but you've stayed at work and busy and doing lots of things. How have you, I want to say coped, it feels just like a shitty word for this, but like, I know you laugh a lot. Do you have a morning routine? Are there certain things that you try and people you connect with? Has anything radically changed besides obviously the loss of Jesse within your lifestyle?
I get up and show up.
Yeah.
Actually, I get up and show up because I made a promise to him. I promised him I'd live the best life. And on the days when I find it hard, I get up and show up, because that's what he'd want me to do. He wouldn't want me to give up. He said to me, Mother, he used to call me Mother to wind me up. He said, Mother, he said, everything goes wrong in your life always, but you're like the phoenix rising. You're like the phoenix rising. Nothing seems to get on top of you. Whatever happens, you just rise again. How do you do that, Mother? And I'm doing it now because I love him, and I will, because he'd be so disappointed in me if I simply crumbled.
So it's almost essentially his voice in your head, in your heart, that kind of does that push for you. That how would he feel? What do I choose to do within this? Yeah.
And there are times when I can hear his voice saying, I won't swear because we're on a podcast, but
you can swear. We don't mind swearing here.
Yeah, okay. I can hear his voice. Oh, for fuck's sake, Mother. Oh, for fuck's sake, just get on with it. and there are times when I'm dithering, because one thing I've noticed, two things that I'm really struggling with. One's decision making. I'm struggling to make a decision.
Which can be a sign of burnout too.
Yeah.
It's just hard. It feels too confused. Yeah.
I struggle to make decisions, And also, I'm finding it difficult to process the written words.
Sure.
And those two things I'm really, really struggling with, but particularly with the dithering over decision making, especially decisions that are not that important. I can hear his voice. Oh, for fuck's sake, mother, just make a decision and get on with it. Is it important? No, mother, just do it. And so I think the fact that I can still hear his voice loud and clear. What I'm slightly worried about is, will there reach a time when I can't quite remember the sound of his voice?
Mm-hmm.
Will that ever happen? I hope it doesn't, but it's a fear I do have, because at the moment it's loud and clear, and his expression is loud and clear.
Yeah. And it's the not knowing. It's the not knowing how it will end, right? And we're talking about your show, but also the life thing. And we talked before we started just about the messy middle. And I loved, you were like, I'm in it. You know, I don't know how it's going to end, but I'm choosing to show up, wake up, show up every single day.
Yeah, I wake up and show up because what else can I do? So that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Day on day on day, I will. And if need be, I'll put some lipstick on, because it does help.
It does. And do some laughter therapy, right? Get some lipstick on. Now, I know this would, I imagine, be the most horrific thing that has happened in your life. I can only imagine it would be for me. But do you think that in the lead up to this most horrific thing, that you had opportunity to build resilience? And I know nothing can prepare us for something like this, but you do have, you just have this strength of character that is choosing to hear his voice and to listen to that bit. Because you could be listening to another bit that could propel you into staying in bed and not getting up, right? So there's something within you that is, in my opinion, choosing to hear him saying, for fuck's sake, get on with it. Rather than, life's really hard, I don't know if I can get up, which it sounds like he would have had times of. Like, do you think that there were bits that built your character and built your resilience in order for you to cope in the best way that you can and be almost sharing this on the platforms that you are?
Oh, it's a good question. Things haven't always been easy. In a number of different ways. I think life isn't easy. Stop. Life isn't easy. I think that possibly there have been some significant moments. One thing is, Sam and Jess's dad were not together, were very, very good friends. Unfortunately, he was involved in a road traffic accident 10 years ago, which left him paralysed. That was a traumatic event. We weren't together then. We'd been split up 5 years. As a family, we pulled together through that. Very, very traumatic. Again, it's one of those, a road traffic accident, you don't expect it. It suddenly happens and you don't see it coming. I remember receiving a phone call from the childminder, actually. I think I had to build up resilience because my children were 11. I might get their ages wrong now. I think they were 11 and 9. 9 and 11, that's right. Sam had just gone to secondary school. I couldn't afford to fall apart.
Right.
Because they needed me. They needed their mum.
So you had to show up for them then.
I had to show up for them because their dad, well, at that time, he then went to a hospital in Sheffield, which is quite some way from where we are in Norfolk. And they were so young, and they reacted in different ways, actually, in completely different ways. But I had to make sure that I was together because there was more at stake than just me. It was about the boys as well and making sure that they were all right through this.
So in a way, you had an interesting practice round of showing up for someone else, showing up for the kids, and just needing to be the strong one. And now the circumstances are very different, but in a similar way, you're doing something with Jesse's voice in your head. And I imagine, I don't want to pry too much, but it's Sam's still around, right? And
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
and
so
that's just it. And that's one thing that I'm very, very mindful of. That Sam is still here.
Yes.
I will always have two children.
Yes.
My youngest will always be 20. My eldest is now 24, and he's still here. He's still here, and he still needs his mum.
Yeah.
He's grown up. He's a grown-up man.
Sure.
I'll always be his mum.
Yes.
And I always, want to be there for him. And I'm really mindful of that. And sometimes I've caught myself and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, am I talking about Jess too much now? Is Sam feeling left out? Because Sam's still here.
And would be dealing with his own grief in his own way, wouldn't it?
I mean, he's dealing with it, really dealing with it. Bless him. He's dealing with it in his own way. And this show that I'm writing, partly the word magic, finding magic. Sam was crazy about magic when he was growing up. He used to drive me crackers with magic tricks. He wanted to be a magician when he was growing up. So I'm actually dedicating the show to him.
Oh, I love that.
So even though it's about my process, and it's going to be on Jess's 2nd anniversary, I'm dedicating the show to Sam because he loved magic, and I'm asking him to teach me some magic tricks.
Oh, which is so connecting as well. Before I ask my final question, if people are interested in the show and what's going to happen, or finding out more about you and the things that you do, where can they get in touch?
The easiest way, I think, probably to get in touch with me is through my website. And there are no details of the show yet because I'm right in the middle of it, although there's details about other bits of me, so to speak. It's beverleybishop.co.uk.
Lovely. We'll add that into the show notes. And finally, just from your heart, I don't know, because I'm not saying you're an expert, but you're an expert by experience. If there is a mom on the show, or a brother, or somebody who's lost somebody in this way, what advice would you give to them? I know that's so broad, but what might you say to just help them get through?
Love. That's all. It's love. Just love. That's all we can do, is love our children and love each other. And that's all I have, really. Love.
What a powerful lesson, especially in these uncertain times. Bev, thank you so much for your time. Whew. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.